about war. 58 counties screaming for the mind. The war's coming forth, never with a disguise. Another A-bot for you who really wants it. Shroud medals in my vocabulary. Rolling with the punches, I'm roving and jumping. Dealing with the problems, I got to be coping. Making it fit, and I click just like a Lego. I'll be Casio, but you can be Tango from the FBI to the CIA. I'm clearing out the path from here to LA. I be from C-Town, kicking the roof there, ripping up the mic and way past sundown. As a world turn. As a world turn.
Welcome back to Prospects of the Land, ladies and gentlemen. There is a ton to talk about today, and we got a playoff series to preview. Taven, what are you holding up there? What is going on?
Well, didn't get the playoff shirt in time. Ordered it Friday, so not here quite yet. But got to rep the 2021 championship shirt, baby.
And we both
Bring
had
us some
the
good luck.
same. We both had the same idea today, sir. We both had the exact same idea. How are you doing?
After this weekend, I don't know. Big losses across the board. Browns lost. My Michigan Wolverines lost. My Giants lost. Guardians lost the series. Ducks almost got swept. So only thing that's saving it's the fantasy team might come out on top. But
yeah, that's not even saving my weekend. I'm in 2 leagues and one of them lost already because no one had anyone playing tonight. And the other one I think is about to win, but I think it can let me down today. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen. But yeah, as we had mentioned, there is a ton to talk about. I almost broke myself yesterday. I went out and shot basketball for the first time in a while, and right now our rec center is closed, so I had to go outside to shoot, which I hate, by the way. I hate shooting outside, but you got to do what you got to do. I rolled both of my ankles. I could tell both of my calves were getting real tight, and I have a softball game today. So I've been drinking water like a crazy person. This is like my 4th or 5th cup today. Like I'm down in water.
oh yeah, weekend hasn't been too kind to either of us. So
no, and well, I mean, this week should be exciting. There's a lot of fun baseball going on. Ohio State still looked good. So, I mean, my weekend was probably a little bit better than yours.
They played a 3rd grade practice squad team. So,
you know what? They were more impressive than Michigan. They were more impressive than Michigan. They were more impressive than most teams in the nation. Yeah, and get a call a football game this week. Big D2 matchup. It's going to be fun. But yeah, well, that's kind of my week. Busy as always here with everything I have going on. Well, let's dive on in talking about some baseball. We will first recap what each of the affiliates did as per usual here on Prospects of the Land. And one affiliate has already wrapped up their season. That is the Lynchburg Hillcats. They lost 4 of 6 to Fredericksburg. Finished the season though above 500. I believe 67 and 62, something like that.
Somewhere around that ballpark, yes.
Yeah, so they finished 4 or 5, take a few games above 500. They finished tied for 4th in the Carolina League North Division. Fredericksburg and Carolina will be going there to the playoffs. Of course, those are the last 2 series that the Hillcats had to play, but I know you wrote down a ton of stats there, Taven, so sort of recap the season for us and tell us who the best performers for the Hillcats were this year.
Well, I mean, you lost 4 out of 6 against Fredericksburg, and that's who's going to be taking on Carolina in the low A championship. So obviously, we've been calling it for how many weeks now since this thing has started. Pretty much in the second half, it was a very long shot for them to make the playoffs, and obviously that's not going to happen this season for Lynchburg. But I mean, on the week, Jackson Humphreys had a great game. He pitched 5 innings, 1 earned run, had 9 strikeouts for the Hillcats. And then you had Isaac Martinez, who just continues to do Isaac Martinez things. He's been one of the hottest rookies thus far. 1 game, 2 innings this week, struck out 2. And then Ryan Cesarini had a 3 RBI day on Friday. So those are just the big dogs for Lynchburg. And we ran into our old buddy Alex Clemmy from the Jose Tena
Rafael
trade.
Ramirez.
Rafael Ramirez did not play. He's on the 7-day IL.
Yep.
But still hanging out in the dugout, obviously. But Clemney, 5 strikeouts and 1 run through 4 innings. So he didn't really get the best of us. We didn't get the best of him. Solid start for both.
And the Lynchburg Hillcats were kind of like the draft pick farm team for the Guardians this year, as they pretty much usually are. But I feel like a lot more draft picks than usual went up to Lynchburg. I mean, you had Garrett Howe, who hit 240, 607 OPS in 50 games. Solid. Again, another middle infield prospect that we have to talk about within this organization. There are a couple other guys that performed really well. Ryan Cesarini, as you mentioned earlier, 913 OPS and 46 at-bats, 283 average, gets on base a lot, 11 RBIs, 3 bags taken. Kid's going to be a great player. And then literally just a ton of pitchers. Donovan Zach had a 1.86 ERA in 7 games. Cam Schulke is a dog. He didn't allow anything in his 8 appearances, 8 2/3 innings of work, struck out 11 batters. He's going to be really good if he continues to show what he showed us this year. Rafe Schlesinger had some good moments, had some bad moments. Overall, 11 strikeouts in 3 games. Can't really complain too much. The really one rookie that struggled out of the pitching standpoint was Sean Hepner. Hit 6.9 ERA, just really couldn't fight it. Again, though, it is a rookie, could definitely end up finding some things later. Caden Favors out of Wichita State, 4 games, 11 2/3 innings pitched. The record isn't going to tell you everything you need to know. He went 0-3, but a 3.09 ERA is pretty solid. And then our guy that we've interviewed, Isaac Martinez, 7 games, 13 innings pitched, 16 strikeouts. Had a couple games where he didn't really find himself, but 2.7 ERA is pretty good. And then the one guy that I know you were really high on that really struggled offensively was Bennett Thompson. I mean, he just couldn't get anything going at all in 49 at-bats, just a .061 batting average, which has to get better for him. But again, a lot to look forward to for Lynchburg next season. Maybe we even see some of these guys that played really well for Lynchburg, like Schulke, like Cesarini, possibly get the start in Lake County next season. All likelihood, you'll probably see all of those guys that we just mentioned back in Lynchburg. But overall, I mean, you take a look at what Lynchburg was this year. Yes, the injury to Jason Churio sucks, and we hope he can get better really, really fast. But you have a lot of guys that ended up making the move up to Lake County this season. And again, it's just sorting out, bringing in that new wave, bringing in those guys for the draft, or I should say from the draft, and sort of develop them to become better ball players. That's kind of what Lynchburg is going to be for the Guardians next season. But overall, pretty solid season. Again, when you play 500 baseball, can't really hang your head too much, even though this team probably felt like they could have made the postseason.
I mean, I love everything Cesarini was about. You mentioned Churio went down, and that was the guy who really kind of stepped up for Lynchburg. But you also mentioned Bennett Thompson not getting off to the hottest start that I thought he'd definitely be at by now. Another guy that's kind of been on the same track as Jacob Cosart, your guy. I think it might be something to do with making that switch for, I mean, a lot of catchers from college ball to pro ball. Obviously, you see even the major leagues, catchers don't really hit above 220, so the hitting stats just aren't there for catchers anymore. But you've already touched on a lot of the guys. Cam Schulke just obviously just tearing it up in low A. I think all these guys are definitely going to start in low A just because they've only seen a month of ball. But definitely, I think a good number of these guys are going to end up in Lake County next year, just like a ton of the draft picks from last year started in Lynchburg, Lynchburg, and then shortly went to Lake County. So
yeah, absolutely. And again, overall, a solid season for the Lynchburg Hillcats. But unless you have any final thoughts on Lynchburg, we're done covering them, at least until something major happens. But that's probably going to be the last Lynchburg talk that we hear, at least while we have Lake County, Akron, and Columbus still playing some baseball. Overall, a solid season for the Hillcats. Anything else to add?
That's it. Just excited to watch these young kids just get to work next year. So,
well, boom. One affiliate is done and over with. We have another affiliate that also ended their regular season, but we're going to review their final series here very, very quickly, because we're going to be talking about them a lot in this show, and that's the Lake County Captains. Hey, there's this little thing, I don't know if you've heard of it, called the playoffs. Yeah, Lake County has went ahead and made it. They took 4 of 6 against Peoria. They finished the second half 3rd in the Midwest League, but they won the first half, which is exactly why they're playing playoff baseball. They were, I believe, 15 or so games above 500 to finish things out. They were 3 games behind Dayton in the second half. And of course, Dayton, the hottest second half team, which means they're the hottest team heading into the postseason. That will be their matchup. And we got a lot for you about the Captains and Dragons later. But you want to go through some of the top performers from this past week? Tugboat, pretty good. Bazana still doing his thing. Yeah. Carter Spivey had a really good outing there. Alex Mooney had a couple of really good showings. So, I mean, walks through a couple of the top performers.
I mean, you mentioned that Dayton's playing hot baseball at the moment, and you're going to be if you win the second half. But, I mean, it's hard to argue that Lake County has really kind of slowed down here. Matt Wilkinson had a great outing on Wednesday. He's going to get the game 1 start, which we'll touch up on a little bit later in the show. He went 6 innings, 3 hits, 5 Ks, and no runs. Mayak Collado, too. He had a 3 RBI day on Tuesday. Another young guy who kind of just got there. He's figuring it out. And if he gets hot at the right time, that could really help Lake County kind of coming down the stretch here. Saturday was just a great day for the Captains in general. Alex Mooney went 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs. And I love everything that Alex Mooney's about. I thought there was a little chance that he might be able to get up to Akron. They went the Tyrese Turner route. I thought it was definitely going to be one of them at the beginning of the year. I think we do see Alex Mooney in Akron at the start of next year, but it's just time for him to prove what he's about in high A and down the stretch into that playoffs. And then Carter Spivey, as you mentioned earlier, 6.2 innings pitched, 2 hits, 1 run, and 9 strikeouts in 6.2 innings pitched. Spivey with just a great outing. And that's what you need to take 4 out of 6 against Peoria just to build that momentum into the playoffs.
Absolutely. And the top 2 draft picks, the first round draft pick, Travis Bazana, who, I mean, mixed results overall, but I mean, for the most part, I think we can confidently say he was pretty darn good. And 101 at bats, 238 average, had 3 home runs, 12 RBIs, stole 5 bags, 7.65 OPS. Again, a little bit of a mixed bag for Bazana. And I know a lot of people had questions about this in previous shows on whether or not you could see Bazana come up. I just don't think he's been consistently hot enough. The stat line is not where you want it to be. You probably want to see him hit 280 to 300 before he gets that call to Akron. And again, Bazana looks like he's going to stay with the Captains for this playoff series, which is really, really good news for Lake County. And then Jacob Cozart, again, much like Bennett Thompson at Lynchburg, didn't struggle as much as Bennett Thompson, but only a 199 average and 42 at bats, 388 OPS, no home runs, no RBIs, not a lot of hits.
I can't believe he hasn't had 1 RBI. That's the stat that kind of stands out. Not even 1.
Yeah, which is crazy. But I mean, overall, again, we're going to table the Lake County talk for right now because we're going to get into it a whole lot more. Let's move on to Akron, shall we? After getting the sweep against the Bowie Bay Sox.
They almost swept.
I mean, not what you want to see at all. This is a team that was as hot can be during that series against Bowie. They won the games they counted, and it just looked like this past series, their final road series against Richmond, they just kind of went, meh, we already made the playoffs, so what else can we do? They lost 5 of 6, which is not something you want to see at all. I mean, they still had some good performances here and now, and Sunday, a 10-run day, exactly what you needed to get back on schedule. But I mean, I don't really know if I want to go through the top performers here because, I mean, overall, again, there were some really good things that happened. And again, Sunday was obviously the big day. We can talk about Sunday a lot, but this is the team, man, that losing 5 of 6, not acceptable to me.
No, for sure. I think they kind of had that mentality going into it, and it's not that big of a deal if you're able to bounce back in this Hartford series, which you definitely have to try. Like this matters.
4 of 6 is what this team needs.
3 to 4 to 6, or 3 to 4 of 6. We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you need, as you said. The top performers, nothing really crazy. Tommy Mace pitched 6 innings, had 5 strikeouts. Parker Messick, 4.2 innings pitched, 1 run on 5 strikeouts. The bullpen was pretty dominant through. I don't think that
and Peterson did not have their best performances.
Not at all. But the thing that I'm just insanely shocked about was Sunday. I thought we were getting swept because I checked my phone and Tommy Mace was scheduled to pitch to start that game.
They went with Jack Leftwich.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a quick 20-0 Richmond after the top of the first, but somehow he got out of it. I'll give him credit where it's due. But I mean, on the offensive side that day, the bats were rolling, and that's what they need to carry into this week. I mean, Engel had 2 RBIs,
Yep.
Planes 2 RBIs. He went 3 for 5 at the plate. Tolentino had an RBI. Valdez, your guy, went 3 for 3 with 3 RBIs. My guy,
coming around.
My guy, Guy Lipscomb, went 4
Everyone's
for 4.
Guy. He literally is Guy.
Oh yeah, and then Tyrese Turner went 2 for 4. So I mean, if you can just carry that into Hartford, and obviously the Erie series, which is what matters here. Coming in about 2 weeks from today, I think you're in a solid place if you can carry the momentum from Sunday over.
Well, again, we usually go through who teams play next at the end of the show. We're going to do it right now because we got a lot of playoff talk. But again, final series is going to be against the Hartford Yargoats. I do believe they won the first half in the other division. So again, Akron's going to be playing another playoff team.
Potential championship matchup.
They need to get hot. They really do need to get hot.
For sure.
So I'm expecting 4 of 6 again. A homestand split would be perfectly fine. I selfishly want 4 of 6 because I want this team to get hot. I want this team to play well. And maybe if we have some time, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But let's go ahead and move on to Columbus. Look, this is a Columbus team that for all intent. Oh, sorry. You have something on Akron before we move on?
One more thing on Akron, and I wish we weren't even announcing this, but I mean, Petey Halpin obviously out. The worst, I think, player that could have went down for this team. He's been with them for 2 years now, and I think he was one of the younger guys, but in my mind, the leader of that team. Dude could play any outfield spot. He was consistent at the plate.
It really sucks.
It really sucks that Petey Halpin went down, especially with the last week of the season. He was one of my guys that I wanted leading off in that championship game. Obviously, now you have to pivot, and now guys like Guy Lipscomb and Tyrese Turner are going to have to step up. But obviously, it's kind of that next man up. But obviously, we wish Petey all the best.
Yeah, and hopefully he can get healthy for next season. And we know that Petey Halpin is still going to be a force in that clubhouse. He's still going to be there talking. He's still going to be there, hyping his guys up and cheering his guys on. But it is really, really unfortunate that he can't be on the field. And again, we were kind of speculating. Petey Halpin got injured. What's hurt? What's wrong? What happened? And now to know that he got surgery on. What did he get surgery on?
Exactly? Some in his shoulder, I believe. It was some in the arm. I think shoulder.
That's what I figured. Yeah.
And I got real scared for a second, too, because there was a stretch where Planes missed 2 to 3 games, and it was the same time Petey Halpin did, and I thought Planes went down as well, and nobody wants that at all.
So again, we wish Petey the best of luck. We love you, man. We hope that you get well really, really soon and continue to cheer on the Ducks team from the dugout. But we got to move on to Columbus, who I talked about last week as being a team that, look, you better roll in these last 3 series. I don't know why I'm being so pessimistic today, but Columbus just did not roll. 3 of 6 against Durham, which, okay, yeah, you secure the split. That's about all you can do. But Durham was a team that coming into it was playing barely above 500 baseball. They got some good prospects, got some good players. They are Tampa Bay's minor league affiliate at the AAA level, and we know the Rays usually do have a fairly solid farm system, but Columbus in the second half still 40-22. I mean, they're 4 games up on Indianapolis, 4.5 games up on Nashville, 7.5 games up on Gwinnett with 2 series left to go. I mean, you saw some pretty good performances this past week. Martinez had a 3 RBI day Saturday, Cairo with 2, Nikhazy pitched well. On Sunday, you had Brito, and if you want to go back to the Week A games, I mean, just what a week it was for Juan Brito in general. 3 RBIs on Sunday, 3 RBIs on Friday. He had the walk-off on Thursday, as well as a home run earlier that game.
Sunday had a 3 RBI game too. Brito's on fire this week.
Yeah, Brito looked really, really good. Tuesday, you just had basically the bullpen look really, really good. Combined 4 innings, no earned runs from them.
Jonathan Rodriguez. Yep.
Jonathan
2 home runs.
Rodriguez hit a home run. Will Dion came in relief on Monday. So even though the results weren't there, you still saw some good things out of Columbus. Besides 2 former Guardians, Logan and Allen, Tristan McKenzie just continue to struggle, and I really have no words for them. That might be a conversation that might have to be its own little segment at the end of the season when we go back and look at Logan Allen and Tristan McKenzie and how they might factor into the Guardians later. But I mean, a lot of the guys that you might expect, like, hey, you know, give them the call here next season. Burrito, Rodriguez, Martinez, even though I don't think the stats will be there for you. Valera did have an RBI on Monday, looked pretty good. James Karinchak, finally, welcome back.
My boy's back, baby.
He had a little bit of a rehab game, didn't give up anything in his one inning of pitching. And I don't expect that Karinchak comes up to the Guardians for playoffs, but who knows? Maybe.
I can see maybe, because they made they DFA'd Barlow, which I absolutely love.
And they brought up Ghost again.
And DFA'd him for the third or fourth time, just literally minutes before we fired this up. They picked up Cantillo's option, so he'll be with the club again. But obviously, Ghost, I
can't make a decision on that, dude. The Guardian,
he looked good in Columbus this week. I mean, I don't think he gave up a run in like 4 innings, and I'm not backing Ghost because I don't think he's good whatsoever.
Yeah, but I mean, just think about it from the mind of Joey Cantillo for 1 second. He's got to be thinking like, dude, the beauty of life is choices. As long as you make one, pick a thing. Do you want me there or not? Like, keep me in Columbus or keep me in Cleveland. Just put me in a situation, man. Don't keep moving me up and down. I bet you that's how Ghost feels too. But I mean, especially from the standpoint of Joey Cantillo.
So the funny thing about Ghost is when we DFA'd him for the third or second time after earlier today, he declined his outright to Columbus, obviously, for the who wants to go up and down after you've been DFA'd like 3 times.
I'm surprised Cantillo hasn't.
And then they signed him back for some whatever reason. And I don't know if they're going to do the same thing with Ghost again, put him down in Columbus and then DFA him for a 4th or 5th time. But obviously the market isn't hot for Ghost, so I don't see nobody signing him. So we'll see what happens with Ghost.
I don't really see many people signing him there as well. But apart from that, Columbus, again, as long as they continue to play as well as they have, they should be fine heading on in to the postseason because they do have St. Paul coming up next. They've really struggled this year. And then their final series, I believe, is against Toledo. Both of those teams are also playing both of those teams are playing sub 500 baseball. So the Clippers, who are sitting in first place, have themselves a very, very beneficial road in order to finish out as a playoff team at the end here of this season. But of course, we know Akron's making the playoffs. Columbus very close to getting into the postseason. In fact, I think even if they sweep, no matter what else happens, they're going to secure a spot in that postseason if they can get the sweep here, kind of like what happened with Akron in the previous series. Columbus just doesn't have as big of a lead as Akron. But we now got to talk about Lake County, man, because the playoffs are here, and we know who's starting game 1 for Lake County. But we're going to talk about that one in a minute. I want to know, do we have any Dayton Dragons fans that are here? Please let me know. And please I have compiled a ton of stats on Dayton and have done my research. If there is anything I miss or anything else that you want to add, if you are a Dayton Dragons fan out there, or just someone that has been around that team, been around that the franchise and sort of knows what they're about, leave it a comment. We'll pop it up. We're going to appreciate all the insight we can get. Again, our job is to cover Lake County, so kind of having to do the research on Dayton this past week has definitely been a little bit of an interesting experiment. But I mean, Taven, where do you want to go ahead and start with this? You want to talk about Lake County or you want to talk about Dayton first?
We can go ahead and talk about Dayton if you want a little bit. I mean, I feel like we're pretty familiar with Lake County around here. Let's see what we're going up against.
Absolutely. And we can definitely dive on into Lake County a lot here in just a little bit. But where do you want to start? You want to start out with, very nice graphic, by the way. Very nice graphic. Very nice.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to start out with the hitting or the pitching side for Dayton? Because I'll tell you right now, at least from what the statistics show, one side is a lot better than the other. So you want to start positive or you want to start on sort of the worst end?
Where do you have the worst end at? Pitching?
Pitching.
Then yes, because we agree on that. I think their hitting side's much better. So let's go pitching.
Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about Dayton's pitching for a second. If you go look at MILB.com and you go ahead and take a look at all the stats, I mean, they probably are no higher than third or fourth in any one category. And for the most part, they're pretty down in a lot of those categories. They have the third worst ERA in, the Midwestern League, I think. Yep. They have in the Midwest League in High, they have the third worst ERA. They've given up the third most hits. They're only sixth in strikeouts, but they are fourth best in home runs allowed. So even though they give up a lot of runs, they give up a lot of base runners, they don't necessarily give up the long ball, which is something that I am going to talk about a little bit more when we get over to the batting side for Dayton. But I mean, you want to go and take a look at some of those players. All of the top 30, and again, Dayton is the Cincinnati High A affiliate. All of the top 30 prospects all come from the hitting side. There's no top 30 prospect for Dayton that is a pitcher, and they really do not have a lot of left-handers, but their best pitcher by far, and I mean by far, that at least starts games for him, is Ryan Cardona. He's 9-5 this year with a 3.29 ERA, only allows opponents to hit 198 off of him, 120 strikeouts to 43 walks this season, doesn't give up a lot of home runs. He's a very, very good pitcher. He likely will probably end up getting that game one ball. Again, we'll talk about for the captains who gets that game one ball here in just a second, but you can also see guys like Jose Franco and Gabriel Aguilera, and hopefully I have said that name right. I believe I did. Those are the two guys that are next best in ERA, but both of them are righty. So if you want to throw a left-handed pitcher into this starting rotation, if you want a lefty to start one of these three playoff games, Bryce Hubbart is there as well. But this is the pitching staff that, look, has had its struggles this year, yes, but there are a ton of injuries to this team as well. And I mean, you can go look through the roster. Their pitching staff has been really, really beat up, and the bullpen has not necessarily been great this season, but you want to go ahead and take a look at the leader in this bullpen, and that is a guy by the name of John Murphy, whose stats I actually did not write down, but I will be going through here in just 1 second, so forgive me while I find John Murphy's stat line, because this guy is lights out from the bullpen. In 40 and a third innings, has a 1.79 ERA, has only allowed 29 hits, 15 runs, only 8 of which have been earned. You go ahead and take a look at what else he's done this season. I don't know why I can't see his strikeouts numbers, so give me a second on that. But along with Murphy, who's, again, stat line I will finish reading here in just a second, you're going to get guys like Brock Bell, Brody Jesse, RG Franzen, that really are going to highlight this bullpen. Again, it's really, really struggled this year. And here's the finishing stat line on John Murphy. 42 strikeouts, has the best whip on the team at 0.98. There is a guy that's played in 18 games, Simon Miller, that has an .88 whip, but I don't believe he is on the active roster, and John Murphy only allows opponents to hit 200 off of him. So, I mean, you take a look at this pitching staff, and when we take a look at the captain's lineup, that holds Bazana, that holds some other really, really good players that, again, we're going to talk about here in just a minute. The Dayton pitching staff is going to have to find something. The offense has definitely carried them into this second half. The pitching just hasn't been there. Again, you need Ryan Cardona to have a really big game whenever he pitches, and this bullpen at least has to survive until you can put John Murphy in. I think those are the two guys that Lake County is going to have their fair share of struggles against. Everyone else, though, I mean, hasn't necessarily pitched that well. You want to talk about a couple other guys in the starting rotation, I'll give you some stats for him. Jose Franco does have a 3.45 ERA, so again, not bad, not necessarily great, and the rest of his stats are just kind of You take a look at Aguilera, once I can find his 4.25 ERA, and then again, if you want to throw that left-handed pitcher in there, and Bryce Hubbart, he has a 5.88, so they don't really have a great southpaw there to go play. And overall, the pitching staff has just really, really struggled.
Yeah, for sure. I want to say Lake County definitely has a better pitching staff going into this. I think
we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But I mean, I guess we should transition this now into talking about some of the guys that you're going to be seeing in the lineup for Lake County. Guys like Alex Mooney, who had himself a really good Mayak Collado, who both of those guys ended up having some really good series. Of course, you got some other guys like not CJ Kafis. He's in Akron. I don't know what I'm talking about. Travis Bazana, who obviously that number one pick. And I mean, look, they do have a ton of guys that have gone up to Akron since they won that first half. And that's kind of where I was going with that. Guy Lipscomb, he's in Akron now. Tyrese Turner is in Akron now. You have guys like CJ Kafis, Nate Furman, Cooper Engel, Jorge Burgos. All of those guys are in Akron right now. So it's sort of something to where Lake County probably going to have to lean on that of Collado, lean on Mooney, lean on Bazana, but you want that back half of the order to really be able to produce for you as well. And we can talk about some other guys here in just a little bit as I actually look at what some of the guys on the current active roster. Give me 1 second. It's being slow. Jake Fox was the guy who had a home run this past week. Antunes can play outfield for you. If Jacob Cozart gets hot, that's a guy that you can watch out for. Angel is up there, and that's a guy that I think we both think. I know we have differing opinions on him about where he falls in that prospect list, but overall, I mean, you can't argue with the talent.
Heck of a player. No doubt about where he
Ralphie Velasquez got that call, and we know he's seen his struggles up there, but there still are very capable bats in this Lake County lineup against a struggling Dayton pitching staff. I want to say Lake County has the advantage in that. Again, we, as of doing this live right now, do not know who the Dayton starting pitcher is going to be. I can guess that it's probably going to end up being Ryan Cardona in game one. Maybe they save him for one of the other games. But again, Dayton gets the first game in Dayton. The other two games are going to be played in Lake County. So if you want to get out to a hot start, you want to win that home game, I think Cardona is going to end up being your guy. You might need him to go 6, 7, maybe even 8 with the way this bullpen has been struggling and with the way we know that Lake County can hit. Is it as good as it was in the first half? No, but Lake County still does have a lot of very impressive numbers offensively, a lot of very impressive players. Dayton's just going to have to find something in the pitching realm, because I don't know that on a consistent matchup to matchup basis, they're going to be able to match up with what Lake County has in that lineup.
Yeah, for sure. You obviously touch on Cardona. I think he's going to be the best bet for Dayton, definitely in that game one series. Because if you don't win game one, you have to win out. And it's not going to be an easy task.
In Lake County.
Yeah, and it's not going to be it's not going to be an easy task to go into enemy territory and take both games. And you got to, in my opinion, you have to throw your best gun when Lake County is. You got to have somebody that could go out there and match Wilkinson, and that's Cardona, in my opinion.
Well, and I mean, let's just go ahead and take a look at some of the stats that Lake County's put up as a team this season. And again, I know there are lots of guys that have traveled up and down, but so far as a team, everybody that has run through there, 103 home runs, only one of 4 high A teams high A teams in this certain league that hit over a home run, over 100 home runs. We'll talk about the Dayton side of it in just a little bit, but they have one of the fewest strikeout numbers across the entire league. They have one of, if not, I believe the best, I'm doing it right now, tied for third best batting average. Their OPS as a team, I think, is the best in the Midwest League. It is. So Lake County can hit, man. Dayton's going to have their struggles with this Lake County lineup.
And another thing that I just kind of put together earlier today was the top 30 prospects in each organization. The Reds, they have 5 of their guys in Dayton. The Guardians with 7. And another thing to point out is all of them are hitters besides Matt Wilkinson. And if we were to do this, I want to say a week or 2 ago when they took
Wilkinson wouldn't even have been on. So
again, Wilkinson would have been on it. So a lot of hitters on both sides.
And kind of a similar storyline there. I mean, Lake County's had a much better pitching effort than Dayton has this season overall. And that really, again, we'll talk about keys to the series here in just a little bit. But I think early on, when we preview the Dayton pitching versus the Lake County hitting, I think that's where the series is going to be won and lost for both of these sides. If Dayton can come out and have some really, really good pitching and shut down this Lake County lineup, I mean, we're going to find out in just a minute how dangerous Dayton is with the bats. And then when you go ahead and take a look at Lake County, I mean, if their bats are going and this Dayton pitching continues to struggle, I mean, all Lake County has to do is pitching just has to be kind of just, okay, hold on and do your assignment. If you allow a couple runs here and there, no big deal. You know, the offense is going to face some pitchers that have really struggled this season.
Yeah, I think you said it best, 100%. I think that's where it's going to be. It's going to be, can the Dayton pitching just really bring it all together for their offense? Because we know their offense can hit. They've been doing it all season. It's just, can really the pitching step up for Dayton?
Well, let's transition into that Dayton offense now, because like you said, sir, they can hit. Oh my goodness. 114 home runs to lead the Midwest League. And I'll talk about some players here in just a minute. And if you want something to look forward to, I mean, this can also be where the series gets won and lost. While the captain's pitching overall is pretty darn solid, they give up a lot, and I mean a lot of home runs. I'll find the exact stat here in just 1 second, but Lake County has given up the third most home runs in all of the Midwest League this season. They've given up 102 home runs, and if you remember, the offense has hit 103. So the pitching staff is giving up just about as many home runs as the offense is producing. And when you play a team like Dayton, that I'll just run through some guys right here, at least in home run totals. Cam Collier, who's the number 5 prospect in the organization, has 20 home runs. Hector Rodriguez, who's the number 12 prospect in the organization, has 12. Carlos Jorge has 12. He's on the 60-day IL right now. He probably will not play, but it is a player worth mentioning for Dayton throughout the entire series. Sal Stewart has 8 home runs. He's the number 4 prospect, the highest rated prospect that is on the Dayton Dragons right now. Leo Balcazar has 6 home runs. He's the number 29 prospect. But a couple other guys that you aren't going to see on that top 30 list each had 10 home runs. Center fielder Jay Allen and right fielder Ethan O'Donnell, again, I'll say it again, each had 10 home runs. This is a team that can absolutely rake, and especially if they get guys on base against the Lake County pitching staff that has given up a lot of home runs this season, that's going to spell a lot of trouble for Lake County, especially, again, we know that team can hit home runs, not more so as they could in that first half. The power has definitely decreased and the power has gone down. So if Dayton can get that home run ball working, that's going to spell trouble for this captain's team.
Yeah, I think you literally said it best. I think that's Dayton's best chance of winning this game is obviously through the long ball. Everybody on their roster seems like they're just able to mash at the plate. Even a guy like Ethan O'Donnell, who's, I mean, just a leadoff center field guy that they use a lot, who's hitting 270, and you think a guy would just be kind of there for average and fielding. No, he's got 10 home runs on the season. So I really like everything that this Dayton team's about. Obviously, you mentioned Cam Collier, who I love. He has 20 home runs and he's hitting 250. He's like Alexfrey Planes in my book. That would be my player comp. Another
leading
guy
the team in RBIs, even though he's not leading the team in hits. He has 106 hits, but 74 RBIs. Again, as we mentioned, 20 home runs. I'll read his slash line, and I'm reading average, slugging, and OPS when I say these numbers: 248, 443, and 798. That's over 119 games played for Dayton this year. So one other thing, too, when you compare this Dayton offense versus this Lake County offense, again, as we mentioned, Lake County has a lot of new faces. They have a lot of guys that went up to Akron this season. Dayton has a lot of guys that have been there all season. I mean, some of the names I mentioned: Cam Collier, 119 games. Hector Rodriguez, 273, 420, 729.
Who's been arguably one of their most valuable players.
Oh,
I mean, the dude has
absolutely.
507 at-bats. That number is insane.
125 games played, 139 hits. He's averaging more than a hit per game. He's a really good player.
He might be playing every single day. I
mean,
he's hitting 275. Just, I love everything he's about. And he's quick, too, on the bases for a left fielder his size.
Yep. Absolutely. And then, I mean, when you just keep going through the stat line here, talking about games these guys have played: Sal Stewart, who leads the team in RBIs in batting average, I should say, among qualified hitters, 279, also has an 829 OPS, which I believe leads that team as well. The highest prospect that is in Dayton right now. He's played 80 games. We know Carlos Jorge is on the 60-day IL, but he played 95 games. Leo Balcazar went and played 102. Jay Allen played 109. Ethan O'Donnell played 104. These are all guys all guys that are still on this roster. There has not been a lot of movement with Dayton at all this season, and I think that especially is really going to help them in this series because, again, when you go up against a pitching staff in Lake County, that, again, does have some really good pitchers, and we're going to talk more. Or actually, why don't you go ahead and rattle off some of the pitchers there for Lake County that we're going to see pitching here? We've already said that Matt Wilkinson is going to be that day one starter, but there's a lot of other really talented pitchers here within this Lake County team.
For sure. I mean, another guy we touched on earlier is Carter Spivey, who's really been starting to just find his groove. Thus far, over his last 3 games, he's just been dominant as anybody has. Alonzo Richardson is another guy who he's been a little shaky, but he's gotten a lot better as of recently. He's 5-8, which if you've listened to us, we don't take record with a lot here, but he has a 4.03 ERA. He obviously eats a lot of innings, so I'm really high on him. Just as a pitcher in that pen, another guy is Dylan DeLucia, who has a 2.55 ERA, 52 strikeouts, a 0.95 whip, just off the charts. He's 0-3, but then again, record doesn't mean much here. In the minor leagues,
doesn't mean much to us. Zach Jacobs,
Jay Driver, he's another guy with a 1.5 ERA. So I mean, the ERAs for just Lake County, they've been off the charts. They've been great. So just, I think a really good pitching staff to match up against Dayton.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, though, the one concern with this team is you give up a lot of home runs. 78 innings pitched for Tugboat or Matt Wilkinson, 8 home runs given up there. A lot of home runs given up by guys in that bullpen. But, I mean, you see guys that aren't really with this team anymore. Guys like Parker Messick that gave up 6 home runs when he was in Lake County earlier this year. Austin Peterson, I mean, he was really good all throughout. He only gave up 3. But a guy like Trenton Denholm, who gave up 13 home runs, is no longer there. And I mean, just a couple of the other guys that you're going to see pitching out of this bullpen, or I should say even that you would have seen pitching out of the starting lineup that weren't there, that gave up a ton of home runs. Now, again, Trenton Denholm being the big one that's gone, giving up 13 home runs. That's definitely his concern. But overall, a lot of guys that are still here in this bullpen, like Jake Miller, Steve Hajar, and many other guys, give up the long ball a ton. Juan Zapata is another guy that gives up a lot of runs, and those guys don't have the best ERA coming out of the bullpen against a stacked Dayton lineup that is used to playing together. They are very, very experienced. This is going to be an absolutely fascinating series. Really is.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you touched on it. I mean, both pitching staff have their weaknesses, so I think it's, in my opinion, it's going to come down to who's going to just mess up first between the pitching staffs, because we know both of these teams can rake offensively. And I think that's obviously why both these teams are here. Just the offensive side, they call Lake County rake county for a reason. And Dayton, we've just read off their stats, they're equally as talented. If not, they might be a little bit better on the offensive side. Some may argue. I would probably say they are. So, I mean, it's really going to come down to the offensive side, and I think that it's really important that Lake County can get that game 1 win with Matt Wilkinson on the bump, because I think he is so much better than anybody else here in either pitching staff. And I think that if you can really get the win with him on the road coming home, you should be able to take the series.
Hey, Taven, I know you can see the live chat over there. Is there anything from any Dragons people, any questions that we have surfacing before we go ahead and dive on into some keys to this series and what it's going to take for both these teams to come out with the series win?
We got nothing yet, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask.
We'll always pop them up. They'll pop up literally right down there. But yeah, okay. So, I mean, if you want to go ahead and swipe this graphic away, we can go ahead and sort of talk about some of the keys here to this game. But actually, before we do that, something I literally just thought about is I want to pull up what these two teams did against each other. So forgive me while I do that. But I mean, if you want to start going into some of the keys to the series for you, unless you just want to kind of go ahead and touch on a little bit more things while I look at how these two teams fared against each other. Again, something I literally just thought about, so it'll take me a minute to pull up.
I mean, I think one of the keys of the game is just the young guys being consistent. You have a lot of guys that maybe not really just got there, but I mean, they're fairly new. You have Ralphie Velasquez, Jacob Cosart, so just two brand new catchers. Bazana's only been there for obviously a little bit. I know it feels like a long time, but just above that 100 at bat mark. So you have him, you have who's fairly young. Just a ton of guys. Isaiah Green, another guy who just kind of got there. Matt Wilkinson, keep in mind, he's always not been there. So I think can the young guys stay consistent? I know they took 4 out of 6 against Peoria, so they're hot coming into it now, but they really have to just stick to what their strengths are and just kind of keep this rolling. I mean, that's kind of my biggest takeaway. And then Matt Wilkinson, I think, obviously, like I just mentioned earlier, just a huge key to the game. I think he has to have a enormous start. And if he does, I really think they can get the win in that game 1 on the road. And then coming back, I think for sure they'd be able to take at least 1 of 2 back in Lake County. So I think Matt Wilkinson and just the younger guys just being able to just kind of hold their own in there, I think that those are my 2 biggest keys of the game.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about what these 2 teams did against each other. The first series that they played, I can't see the date fully because of my monitor. Okay, so all the way back in early May. So back in early May is when, and why did my screen just do it? Okay, yeah, so all the way back in early May when these 2 teams played for the first time. No, when these 2 teams played for the first time. I'm going to kind of run through like series by series here and sort of tell you like, hey, this is how they fared. And I don't know why it just went away. But anyway, I'll go ahead and talk to you about it here a little bit. They took 4 out of 6. And by they, I mean Lake County. Obviously, we cover Lake County, so I'll be referring to them as kind of like they. But Lake County was able to take 4 of 6 from Dayton. But the one concerning thing about that is, I mean, you take a look at the winning pitchers there from those games. Messick won game 1, Denholm won game 3, and Peterson won game 5, with Spivey getting in there for a win in game 2 of that series. 3 out of those 4 guys are gone. So you're going to need some of the other pitchers there to really step up. But the first series they played, they were able to go ahead and take 4 of 6. You look at what happened the next time they played Dayton. This one was sort of like a weird split. There was a 3-game series in Dayton and then a 3-game series back home in Lake County. By the way, that first series against Dayton was a full 6-game home series, but this next one, again, little bit of splitsies. They had 3 on the road in Dayton, of which they lost 2 of 3. And then when they came back home later, they won 2 of 3, including a 20-1 rout.
Which was
20-1 was the final.
What was the date on this one? Was this the 4th of July series where they split it?
I believe so. Give me a minute and all. Yeah, it was July 5th.
And the interesting thing about that series is that
the July 5th was the day of the 20-1 route. And guess who was the winning pitcher? Well, hang on. Guess who was the winning pitcher for that game? Trenton Denholm, no longer there.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing about that one though is
go ahead.
Yeah, that was the first one without Kafis and Furman, which had pretty much just been going crazy for them. So, I mean, that was a good sign there. So it shows that you can win.
You go on the road to play Dayton in the next series that they happen to face each other. That might have been the last time that they played Dayton. It was. So in the final series that they played Dayton on the road, things did not fare out too well. There were a couple of like weird games. There was some rain on the Tuesday, August 6th. So the game had to be suspended. It was completed a day later, but Lake County won that one's wrap. Was able to get the win in that one. And the only other win of the series came on Sunday. So Rapp got both wins there for them in that series. But I mean, you take a look at the other games, 2-4, 2-4, 3-7, and 2-4, as Dayton was able to take 4 of 6. So I believe if my math is correct, we have an even series split, my friend. Both of these teams won equal amount of games against each other this year. This is going to be a fun series. This is going to be really fun.
It really gives us nothing on who has the edge. I mean, as you said, this might be one of the better series that we see in the playoffs. Just
across
AAA to low A. Across all levels. Just I think this is one of the better playoff series that we're going to see.
Well, again, let's go ahead and start diving on into a little bit of the keys. Again, the first game is going to be against, or obviously it's going to be against Dayton. The first game is going to be in Dayton on Tuesday, and then they come back home for games 2 and 3, if necessary, on Thursday and Friday. And we're going to have everything from that for you here later on this week. We'll recap that series. We'll go through the whole shebang. But right now, keys to the game. Let's go, or not, well, keys to the game, obviously, but keys to the series as a whole, because obviously we're not going to be coming back live to sort of recap every game for you guys. If we have the time to, we'd love to do it, but keys to the series here for both teams. Let's start with the team that we cover first, and that is Lake County. Who needs to get hot? What needs to happen? The first thing that needs to happen, needs to happen above everything else. You cannot give up the amount of home runs that you gave up in the regular season. You have to limit the long ball from Dayton, because if Dayton, look, they don't drive in a ton of runs in general, but when they do, it's through the long ball. If you get guys on base and then one of their power hitters comes up, especially if you allow the bottom of the order for Dayton to really get going, and then you have, again, a lot of those guys that we just mentioned there to sort of come up and mash those home runs over the fence, you're going to find yourself in a hole really quickly. So guys like Wilkinson and others that will be pitching here, which, by the way, who do you think is going to end up being the starting 3 here? I think it's going to end up being Wilkinson 1. If they win, Spivey probably
2 for sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Spivey. So the question is who takes that third game? Probably Dylan DeLucia, you would think, takes the third game.
I would think DeLucia.
If they pitch it, or
really
maybe if they.
I think it depends on if they win or lose. Maybe, obviously, I think if they win, they're going to go DeLucia
so here's
game
what I'm
2,
thinking,
just so
right?
you have
Yes. No. I literally agree with the sentiment that you were just saying. If they win, they'll go DeLucia game 2. If they lose, they're going to go Spivey game 2, because Spivey again 3.32.
Because you're going to need a win.
ERA, 96 strikeouts,
in their rotation at the moment. Yeah.
Yep. And then I just think that DeLucia is going to be that guy. Maybe Maltrude is going to end up getting the start, but I mean, DeLucia has much better numbers.
I've watched DeLucia throw. I mean, you just look at his stuff. It's way better. So I think it'll be DeLucia.
And then pitching wise for the Dayton, I apologize, we're jumping around everywhere, but I did want to mention this. Pitching wise for the Dragons, you're going to have Cardona. I would imagine start game 1. Again, I haven't heard anything on who Dayton's going to throw out there on the mound game 1. I would imagine it's Cardona, because if you want to get at least one win in this series, and you want to get that win at home first and foremost, you want your best pitcher on the mound, and that best pitcher is Ryan Cardona. But if you want to go with some other guys, I mean, probably Jose Franco, however you pronounce that last name. Again, I apologize, to get the bump there on game 2. But then who do you go with for game 3? Again, if you want a lefty, you probably go with Hubbard. Rivera is there, a guy that we haven't mentioned yet. Sakema. You have other guys like Harmon and Aguilera. Like, who gets that start for game 3? I think that's going to be the biggest question mark, is if they find themselves down, if they use Ryan Cardona in game 1 and then they find themselves down, I think they're obviously going to go with their second best pitcher, which is Jose Franco. But then if they win that game, who pitches game 3?
I really have no clue. I'm trying to see if there's any news that has come out. Just on Twitter or anything, because I'm really interested to see I just want to know who the pitching matchups are going to be. Still nothing out of Dayton. It's confirmed, obviously, on MILB, as it was announced on Twitter that Wilkinson's going to be that guy pitching for Lake County, but still nothing yet on Dayton, which is odd, because obviously game 1's tomorrow. So I'm just interested to see when the news will come out on who's gonna. And again,
maybe Cardona does. Maybe they want to save Cardona. Maybe they're like, okay, we trust our offense. Let's pitch Franco in game 1, and then Cardona is gonna get the bump on game 2. Especially if they lose, maybe they save him for game 3. If they win that game 1, they say, okay, we can kind of relax a little bit. Let's see if our offense can do something here. But yeah, so they're kind of the 3 pitchers that we sort of, again, that third pitcher for a Dayton to me is a complete mystery. I have no clue. Yeah. No clue.
Same here.
And again, it depends on if they want a lefty pitcher, a righty pitcher, if they want a guy with more movement, if they want a guy with more velocity.
And that's even if we get to a game 3. I mean, easily one of these teams could get hot and take 2 out of 2.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. So now let's talk about the lineups a little bit here. Obviously, we've mentioned on a ton of names for Lake County. Pulling stuff up here. I mean, Collado, Fox, Mooney, of course, Bazana, Cozart, if he gets hot, Velasquez. There are guys in this lineup that can hit. A lot of them have been inconsistent so far. Had himself a really good series this past week. Overall has been inconsistent at Lake County. Velasquez, ever since he's come up, has really struggled. Cozart, we read off his numbers earlier. He's really struggled. Bazana has shown a lot of very good things, but this past series, he only went 3 of 19. I don't know. This is the Lake County lineup that I still have some good confidence in, especially considering the pitching rotation they have to go up against. But this lineup is not as good as it would have been if the season were to end after the first half. I mean, if we were to say, look, the first half is over and that's the roster you have for the playoffs, I'd have a lot more confidence about this Lake Erie lineup. And look, they still got some really good players, especially going up against the Dayton pitching staff that has struggled. But comparatively speaking to the Dayton lineup, I'm worried. I really am.
A little bit. I mean, obviously, you lost Kafis, who, in my opinion, is the best offensive player that we have in our entire system. You lost, obviously, 3 of your best starters that you've had all year in Messick, Denholm, and Peterson. So especially on the pitching side, I think you decreased a lot, but on the offensive side, I think you're just as strong, if not maybe a little better. I mean, you have Velasquez, you have Cozart, who's a new addition. You have, who wasn't there in the first half. You have Isaiah Green, Bazana. So pretty much everybody on your offense is just kind of, I don't want to say new, but like they weren't there. So I kind of compiled a little lineup while you were going on,
Sure,
off kind of top of the dome, on who I kind of want to see just in game 1 at least. I want Cozart behind the plate. I think he's really good there, and he's better than Velasquez behind the dish. Then you have Velasquez at first for Lake County, Bazana at second, at short, Mooney at third. I think your infield might be the best infield in the entire, maybe even minor leagues. I mean, that infield is stacked. I don't think there's a weak spot in it at all. The outfield, where it gets a little bit on the shakier side, it's not bad by any means, but it's nowhere near as strong as the infield for Lake County. I think Jake Fox will get to start in center. I think Isaiah Green will get to start in left, and I think Wilfredo Antunes will get to start in right field. So
that's kind of the lineup that I would figure out there as well. Yeah,
that sounds for sure.
That sounds pretty good to me.
And then maybe Jose Devers definitely could be a utility guy in there. That's the one guy who I really like in the infield, but you surround yourself with pretty much a minor league all-star cast. You're not really going to get much time, but I think Devers will fill in.
So I'm looking right now at a certain lineup that they went with for Dayton in their last series against Great Lakes. And I don't know. I think if you were to put a lineup together, it would have to include Collier, it would include Rodriguez, it would include Allen, it would include O'Donnell, it would include Sal Stewart. You have 2 catchers that you can go back and forth on. That's either Cade Hunter or Logan Tanner. I believe Cade Hunter is there right now. I think. Let me go ahead and actually just double fact check myself. They played Burns at catcher in 1 game. And I'm Connor Burns, who is up there, so maybe we could see him. But I mean, overall, again, I don't know enough about Dayton to put a full lineup together. But what I do know is that in game 1, it probably is going to include Collier at third base. Rodriguez will play right. Allen will play center field. You have O'Donnell that can go out there and play as well. Stewart's going to play second. You have Carter Graham, who we haven't even talked about. We haven't even talked about a lot, but Carter Graham is going to go out there and start at first. Balcazar will probably end up being that shortstop. So there's your entire infield right there. Carter Graham at first, Balcazar at short, Sal Stewart at second base, Collier at third base. I know you just went through that Lake County infield. I mean, come on. That Dragons infield is really, really good as well. Their offense is going to have some power. We'll see who they play behind the plate. Again, I think one of Hunter Tanner is not there right now. Connor Burns has been there and has played. So we'll really be able to see what happens there. Let me actually go to who they have played in the past series. I'll look at the past 7 days here. Okay, they've played Cade Hunter and they've played Connor Burns. So Cade Hunter at catcher probably would be the better option to go with there, even though he really struggled this past series. This is going to end up just being a very, very fascinating one. But again, as we've sort of previewed here all podcasts long, we will now fully dive on into some keys to the game. Again, the thing I mentioned earlier, I want to talk about the most because it's Lake County limiting that long ball. I mean, you hear a lot of the names that we have mentioned here for this team, Collier and Allen and just O'Donnell, Rodriguez. All of these guys can go hit home runs. All of them. They all can.
Oh, yeah. There's not a weak spot in that lineup, in my opinion.
Nope.
Every one of them can mash.
I mean, you did have some guys struggle in their past series, like Allen only hit 071, and let's see here.
But a guy like Allen's not really there kind of for
167
average. I think he's there for just power. So,
well, I mean, if you want power, Dayton did not have a home run in their last series. Does that bode well for the Captains?
Good news. I would say good news for the Captains. Yeah, they've definitely cooled off. So,
I mean, we can't discount Dayton at all. So, I mean, the fact that Dayton led the entire Midwest League in home runs and they
won the second half. So, obviously, they're hot for a reason.
Yeah, and they didn't even hit a home run in their previous series and still led the Midwest League in home runs. We know this team has power. But, again, big things that I am looking for, it is a Captain's pitching staff, most notably the bullpen, that gives up a ton of home runs in the late part of games. It's a Dayton lineup that can hit home runs. Obviously, when you have a team that can hit home runs versus a pitching staff that gives up a lot of home runs, the advantage is going to go to the offense. But in terms of starting pitching, the Captains have the clear advantage there. And if they can shut down this lineup, if a guy like Wilkinson could go out there and pitch really well game one, some of the other players that we've mentioned, some of the other pitchers that we've mentioned that are probably going to end up getting the call here for Lake County to go start, if they can at very least limit the long ball, they're going to be able to limit a lot of the damage that Dayton's able to do offensively.
For sure. And I mean, I kind of have a big question for you. Just kind of.
Sure.
While we're getting into it, is who is trying to think on how to word it, like not a sleeper pick, but who needs to kind of have a sneaky good series for either side? If you could have one guy,
I think it's guys at the catching position for Dayton so guys at the catching position for Dayton, because if you can get that bottom half of that bottom third of the order really moving, that's going to spell a lot of trouble for Lake County. But I think the bullpen on both sides has to be really, really good. I firmly do believe that even though we both are sitting here and agreeing, and I think even a lot of Captains and Dragons fans will agree with this sentiment, the Captains starting pitching is much, much better than what the Dragons have. And there is no question about that. The bullpen may also very well be better, but both of these bullpens have struggled. And specifically when you're talking about the Captains bullpen, when you pitch against the team that hits a lot of home runs, you're going to give up a lot of home runs. And again, this is the Dayton pitching staff that pretty much top to bottom, yes, has been injury riddled and injury filled, but the guys that have played, they've really, really struggled. So I think whichever bullpen has themselves a stronger series is going to put their team in much, much better position to win, because you know the old adage in baseball, this is mainly applied to the major league level, but bullpens win postseason games. They really, really do.
For sure. Yeah. And I mean, a Lake County staff that doesn't really go deep with starters, obviously, with a lot of them being promoted. This is their series to win. You only need 3 starters, 3 quality starters, and you got that. The other 2 guys can go in the bullpen and help out. But if I had to pick somebody on the offensive side for Lake County, I think it's going to be Alex Mooney. And here's my reason why. It's because Alex Mooney at the start of the season was hitting 290, 230. He slumped down a little bit. He's hitting 240 with 12 home runs. But I really think it's time for Alex Mooney. That I think he's going to wake up this series. I think he's going to have a big series. And I think that's going to be one of the reasons why Lake County could come away with this.
Yeah, and I think we've seen a lot of guys on the Dayton side that, again, the home run ball has to wake back up, assuredly. You can't go this entire series without hitting a home run, especially against the pitching staff that, I know I keep saying it, but it's really important to mention, gives up a lot of home runs. So this is a Dayton team that needs to find that long ball back, and there are a ton of guys that can do it. That shouldn't be a huge concern for Dayton at all, but you're more focused on the offense and which sort of offensive players need to have a bigger game. The bullpens as a whole need to be shut down for both of these teams because
Oh yeah,
any
they're
sort of
equally as important for sure, if not
any
more.
sort
I think
of
probably
any
more
sort of leakage and cracks for either of these bullpens is going to spell trouble. It's
for
going
sure.
to spell some real trouble. Okay, well, let's go ahead and dive on into, I guess, our official predictions. I think we've covered pretty much everything we need to cover. Captains and Dragons. Who wins it? Who wins it?
I think the Captains are going to get a good start out of Matt Wilkinson, game one. So I have them taking game one, and then I think they're going to put in DeLucia. I think the Dragons hitters are going to get the best of DeLucia game two, and it's fitting because they've split every single the season series as well. Two teams that are evenly matched. So I think DeLucia is not going to have his right stuff, and the Dragons are going to have a huge game two bounce back in Lake County. So I think each team wins one on the road. Then it comes down to game three. And who do I think is better? I'm gonna go with Spivey. So I think Spivey's gonna shut it down. I think Lake County is gonna have a solid night on the offensive side, and I'm gonna take Lake County in 3.
Your sentiment is very, very similar to mine, but I am flipping the two predictions there. So I do think that I do think that Dayton is going to win that first game. More likely than not, I think their best pitcher is going to be on the mound. They know how important it's going to be for that home run ball to really wake up, and getting up one game before you have to go on the road to play Lake County is as important as ever. And I mean, you go back and take a look at the series history of the way these two teams have played each other this season. The team that plays at home has always won this series. Always. Yeah. I think Dayton takes game one at home. And then again, just sort of like you said, okay, this is where they're probably going to end up playing Spivey now. So I just kind of have that prediction all flipped. This is probably where they're going to end up playing Spivey because they need that arm to be able to win them game two. And just like your sentiment for game three and your prediction, I do think that Spivey is going to be able to shut down this Dragon lineup. He's going to have some really good stuff, and this Lake County offense is going to be able to roll. So I have Lake County in game two. And again, like you said, right, how fitting. It's going to come down to one game between these two teams who have split the regular season series as a whole. And I'll go with the team that I think overall is in better position to win. Even though Dayton is the hotter team right now, I think Lake County is just a little bit better. Yes, their lineup not as good in the first half, but I think their bullpen has pitched a lot better, even though it has struggled at points this season. I think their starting pitching is better, and they have the best player on the field. That is Travis Bazana. They are going to be able to win this series. I got the Captains in 3.
For sure. I think this isn't even a playoff matchup. I think should be the championship. If these
this is going to be a great series, man,
for sure. If these two teams were on the other side of the bracket, they'd definitely be meeting in the the championship game. So
yeah,
I think
this is a phenomenal series
for sure. And the fact that we're getting it in round one is just
and
it's a treat.
How, you know what? Shame on us. How have we forgotten to mention it's an in-state series, mind you? I mean, come on, you can't get much better than that, can you? I don't think so.
No, and that might help both teams cut down on travel. So,
we got any questions or anything else to add from the chat today, or has it been kind of quiet?
None today. Pretty quiet. So,
I mean, is there any other talking point you want to talk about? Want to talk guard ball for a little bit? We do have some time. I know you got to get going here in just a little bit. We got some time to throw some guard ball in here.
Why not? I mean, you got what, 3 weeks left? So
yeah, 3 weeks left. And again, I think we'll just echo the sentiment that we said in our last show, play 500 baseball. And look, they have a series with the White Sox coming up. I'm going to keep knocking because every time that we play the White Sox
all season,
every time we play the White Sox, we can't, we can't play the AL Central. We really can't.
The worst team in baseball for whatever reason.
I'm going to hope, knock on wood, because this needs to be a series sweep.
For sure.
It's going to be great for, at very least 3 of 4. At very least 3 of 4.
We played for 4. I thought it was 3. Yeah, nope, even more.
Yep. Yeah, let me fact check that actually. I think it's 4. I really do think it's 4, but I'm going to fact check myself here. Oh, no, you are right, sir. It is only Tampa Bay is the 4-game series that we have coming. Okay. So Tampa for 4, which is the other series this week. So the Guardians don't have a day off this week at all. even more to my point now. Like, if
Yeah,
it was
you
a
gotta get
4-game
3.
series, I would want 3 of 4. You need all 3. You really
Yep.
need it. And I mean, look, when you take a look at the way that Cleveland, Kansas City, and Minnesota are going to finish out their schedules, Kansas City and Minnesota still have to play each other. I think the Guardians are done playing those two. No, they have the Twins a little bit later this year, a 4-game set at home, which is going to be absolutely massive next week. That is a huge, huge series. But Kansas City, you go look at their schedule, they got a lot of hard teams to finish up with. And if the gap between Cleveland and Minnesota stays the same as it is now, even if they get swept by the Twins, which wouldn't be good because then Kansas City can take that leap, the Guardians would still be ahead of the Twins. So they either need Kansas City to fall back, which could be likely. Kansas City's got, again, some really tough series, but right now it's a 2.5-game lead over Kansas City. It's a 5-game lead over Minnesota. You play 500 baseball with the way that both of those two teams, Kansas City and Minnesota, have schedule-wise. You're probably going to still end up winning that division. I mean, I just really don't see, if the Guardians finish this season with 91 wins, I don't see the Royals matching that. I don't see the Twins matching that. 90 wins maybe not even 91. 90 wins may win you this division. And if it does happen that way, you'll get a top 2 seed, because I don't even see because I don't even see Houston catching up to that mark either. No. I don't think Houston's going to reach that 90-win mark. All I am asking the Guardians to do, win 9 games. I don't care how you do it. It would be huge, absolutely huge, to get 3 here against the White Sox. And look, what if they win 5 of 7 games this week, 6 of 7? Fantastic. I think the division is unlocked.
We've been saying it for a couple of weeks now. We just got to play 500 baseball the rest of the way, and we think you're in, and you have the 2 seed. I don't see a world where we're kind of catching the Yankees or Baltimore here, but I truly believe that 2 seed's kind of ours, and we just got to play 500 baseball to get it.
Now, obviously, we are sitting here saying all the Guardians need to do to secure that postseason berth and secure that first-round bye, we believe, is play 500 baseball. That is not what we want, okay? We want the Guardians to go out there and look, like I just said, it would be huge to win 5 of 7, 6 of 7 games this week. You're going up against the Rays, who have really struggled this year. You're going up against the White Sox, who historically are one of, if not the worst team baseball has ever seen. That might be the worst team put on dirt and field. They are bad. They are bad.
People are comparing some of their plays picture picture, and they were almost exact to literally the major league team. I mean, that team is rough.
It's just not good. If we don't sweep the White Sox, I'm going to be very upset. I'm going to be very upset because there have been a lot of players within this organization that have been able to get going. Lane Thomas has started to find his stride. Thank God, we needed him to do so. Ramirez is still there. Naylor is still there. Kwan is still there. Big Christmas has slowed the home run party down a little bit, but we know that he can get back up. Manzardo is up there now. How did he play at first the other day, by the way? I don't think he played bad.
No, he played good. The bat kept rolling. I mean, he didn't really have too many insane plays to kind of make. They were all pretty routine, but I mean, made every one of them.
So I've kind of mentioned the fact that hey, these teams have some hard roads to figure out. The Guardians, White Sox for 3, Rays for 4, Twins for 4, Cardinals for 3, Reds for 2, and Astros for 3. That's what's up the rest of the way for the Guardians. And honestly, I mean, you take a look at it. That Rays series is at home. That Twins series is at home. Yeah, you play the Cardinals on the road, and you get the Astros at home. It's going to be a really interesting finish, but you're up against the White Sox and Rays this week, teams that you should beat. 5 of 7 is really, really realistic to say. You at very least want 4 of 7, but 5 of 7 is probably what you need to get.
For sure, yeah.
And then you take a look at what some of the other teams have here. So we'll take a look at what Kansas City possesses. I mean, yikes. They got 3 games against the Yankees coming up here starting today, going on through Wednesday. There's a bye week, and they have a road series against the Pirates, especially if Paul Skeens is pitching one of those days. Ooh, watch out. That could be dangerous. The Pirates are a fairly dangerous team. But then they get to come home for 3 against the Tigers, 3 against the Giants, on the road for 3 against the Nationals, which could be a little scary. Again, the Nationals are not the best team, but they have their moments. And then on the road for 3 against the Braves, a team that needs to start winning in order to clinch their spot in the postseason. And very well, it may come down to that series for Atlanta on whether or not they get to the postseason or not. So that's going to be a high energy season for Atlanta. So yeah, they have some favorable series in there, and overall probably an easier road than the Guardians have. Those road series like against the Yankees and against the Braves, I think are really, really going to hurt them, and just why I don't see Kansas City catching up. You take a look at the Twins. Obviously, I've said they have a series against the Guardians, but right now it's a series against the Angels, and then they go ahead and play the Reds for 3 apiece. Then it's the series against the Guardians, 3 on the road against the Red Sox, 3 at home against the Marlins, and 3 at home against the Orioles. Again, though, it's a much tougher task for Minnesota to catch up that division lead than it is for Kansas City. That's why you should be more concerned about Kansas City than you are for Minnesota. But again, both teams have their series where probably not as difficult as I had first thought here in my head. Maybe I was thinking of the overall month of August, but all 3 of those teams have series where the Guardians have them now, the Royals have them coming up, the Twins have them coming up, where they should roll and they should win games. But it's the series that the Guardians are going to play against Minnesota that I think is really going to determine how this division shakes out. I really 100%. Do believe that.
Yeah, for sure.
Any questions or anything from anyone before we move on? Or I know you got to get going here, so we'll wrap things up.
Yeah, I mean, what's going on in your world just this week?
So today I have a softball game, and we're going to hope I don't break myself. Wednesday's a flag game. Had a touchdown catch my last game. We might be playing a little quarterback. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see. We might be playing a little quarterback. But other than that, a lot of media stuff, newspaper editing day tomorrow, podcast things. I call a football game. If you follow me on Twitter at the link right there, I'll be posting the link for you to go listen, even a link for you to listen and watch. So, hey, you can not only listen to me, but watch the game as well. Near top 25 matchup in Division 2. The last time that the college I go to played this specific team we're playing again at home, it was homecoming in 2022, and we beat them. So we're hoping for a pretty similar result.
Yeah.
What's going on in your world? What coverage are you doing this week?
It's more high school football.
Ducks? No, Ducks are on the road. Never mind. No, Ducks are at home.
We're home. Yep, looking for Saturday possibly, and then obviously next Tuesday for the playoff game, which obviously next week's show will be all about the Ducks playoff series, and if Lake County does win this one, it'll be the previewing their championship series. So possibly
we might have 2 huge
episode next week.
Yeah, possible huge episode. Possible huge episode for the next 2 weeks, because next week we could be previewing the Lake County final as well as Akron playoff series, and the week after that we could be previewing the Akron final and a Columbus playoff series. We could be talking about Guardians playoff baseball here in a couple of weeks. It's just a lot of playoffs. This organization's been very successful when it comes to that. I know you got a volleyball game to be announced, so I'll let you go, sir. Anything else before we sign off?
Yes. Thanks everybody for watching, and same time.
Yeah, thank you for watching. And please, I know the weather is getting cooler, but this is as important of a time as ever. When the weather gets cooler, you don't feel the need to drink as much water. Please drink water. This is like my 4th one today. I've been drinking water like a crazy person. Drink water, stay hydrated. We'll see you in the next podcast. Thanks for watching, everyone.